India, one of the world's largest oil buyers, suddenly turns its back on Russia. Not gradually, not in 5 years, overnight. Why? Well, on the surface, it's about tariffs. Behind the curtain, it's about pressure. And underneath that, it's about something far more dangerous: power. And here's the plot twist no one saw coming. The country that swoops in to cash in on India's sudden move isn't Saudi Arabia, it's not the United States, it's Nigeria. But before you think, this is a simple winner-loser story, here's the kicker. Nigeria's mega refinery, the pride of Africa, runs mostly on American crude. Yeah, let that sink in. It's like making your nation's most famous dish with imported ingredients. This is more than an oil story. This is a geopolitical chess match, and every move, every barrel could ripple straight into your gas tank, your electricity bill, and the price of the groceries in your fridge. Please stick with me, because by the end of this story, you're going to see exactly how the power game works and who's calling the shots when the music changes. Let's rewind to early 2025. For years, India has been on what I'd call an energy shortcut, buying oil from Russia at steep discounts while most of the West slammed on the brakes after the invasion of Ukraine. While other countries were turning away, India kept the taps open. And why wouldn't they? The math was too tempting. Russian crude was being sold at bargain prices. Sometimes $15 to $20 a barrel is cheaper than alternatives. That adds up, and when you're importing millions of barrels a month, those savings aren't pocket change. They're billions. By 2023, over 30% of India's total oil imports came from Russia. Think about that. Nearly 1 in every 3 barrels burned in India was Russian. That's like your favorite coffee shop, giving you every third latte free, forever. Now here's the thing about deals like that. They create habits. And habits create dependence. And dependence? Well, that's a very dangerous position when the ground shifts. And in the summer of 2025, the ground did shift. Because in geopolitics, nothing lasts forever, especially not the sweet deals. That's where our story begins. Late July 2025. Washington, D.C. is in full summer heat, but the real temperature spike isn't outside. It's in the trade war room. President Trump, back in the Oval Office, makes a move that will ripple across oceans. He announces tariffs, not the usual 5% nudge, not a 10% warning shot, but a jump from 25% to a jaw-dropping 50% on key imports. It's the kind of economic punch that makes boardrooms go silent and phone lines burn up. Now, tariffs like this aren't just about collecting more tax, they're leverage. It's Washington saying, play by our rules or pay the price. And in New Delhi, those words land like a thunderclap. For years, Indian refiners have been playing a careful balancing act, buying cheap Russian oil, while still keeping trade relations smooth with the US and Europe. But this throws the balance off the table. Within days, the big two, Indian Oil Corporation, IOC, and Bharat Petroleum Corporation Limited, BPCL, are forced to rethink everything. This isn't a slow strategy session, this is emergency mode. Picture the scene. IOC's trading desk in Mumbai, dozens of analysts hunched over monitors. World maps glowing red where supply is at risk. BPCL executives pacing corridors, phones glued to ears, calling contacts in Houston, Abu Dhabi, Lagos, Mission, replace Russian barrels. Fast. By the end of that week, they've made their play. They lock in deals for 22 million barrels of non-Russian crude for delivery in September and October. IOC grabs oil from the US, Brazil, Libya, Canada, and the Middle East. They also secure 1 million barrels of Nigeria's prized Agbami, a light, sweet crude that refineries love. BPCL isn't far behind, snapping up Nigerian grades US Mars, Abu Dhabi Murban, and Angola's Girasol. Each of those barrels is a statement. We're not chained to one supplier. But here's the thing, making a sudden switch like this isn't painless. These new sources aren't as cheap as Russian oil, and they come with new shipping routes, new contracts, and new political strings attached. And in this frantic scramble, something unexpected starts to happen. One country emerges as a surprising winner, a country that, just a few years ago, wasn't even in the conversation when it came to dominating Asia's oil supply. That country is Nigeria. But why Nigeria? And what's the hidden catch in its sudden rise? That's where we're going next. Hold up. If you've stuck with me this far, you're clearly into these kinds of deep dive stories. Quick ask, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. Trust me, what's coming makes this look like just the trailer. Shifting 22 million barrels of oil in global trade terms is massive. This isn't like swapping your morning coffee brand because the store ran out. This is like your entire national caffeine supply chain going dry and you having to rebuild it overnight. For India, Russian crude wasn't just a cheap option, it was a habit. The shipping routes were established, payment systems were in place, discounts made the math irresistible. Now, that habit had to break. The replacement, crude from Brazil, Canada, Libya, and the Middle East. Good quality, sure, but it came with higher freight costs, longer lead times, and most importantly, no more deep discounts. Still, the refiners moved fast. And in that rush, Nigeria's Agbami crude stood out like gold. Why? Here are the two big reasons. Quality. Agbami is a light, sweet crude. Translation: it has low sulfur content and yields more of the high-value fuels, diesel, petrol, jet fuel, that India's growing economy burns through daily. Location advantage. Shipping from West Africa to India, while not as close as the Middle East, is still strategically favorable compared to hauling from the US Gulf Coast. And right now, with Atlantic to Asia arbitrage improving, Nigeria's barrels make both political and economic sense. The numbers tell the story. Nigeria produces around 1.2 million barrels per day with proven reserves of 37 billion barrels. On top of that, it sits on a jaw-dropping 206 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. For India, tapping into that is more than just replacing Russian oil. It's building a relationship with a supplier that can deliver a lot more than crude in the future. But let's not sugarcoat it. This wasn't just a smooth pivot from Russia to Nigeria, it was a fast and expensive shift. A signal to the world that India was willing to pay more in the short term to gain flexibility. In the long term, here's the analogy, it's like your favorite coffee shop suddenly closing. You try 5 other cafes. The coffee costs a little more. Some aren't quite to your taste, but one, Nigeria's blend, is strong, smooth, and available. So you start going there more, and before long, it becomes your new morning routine. That's where India was heading, a new morning routine in oil imports. But just as Nigeria was stepping into this spotlight, a twist was brewing behind the scenes. Because while India was starting to depend more on Nigeria's oil, Nigeria's most important refinery wasn't dependent on Nigerian oil at all. And that's where things get really interesting. Nigeria isn't new to the oil game. It's been Africa's heavyweight champion in crude production for decades, pumping out roughly 1.2 million barrels every single day, enough to fill over 76 Olympic swimming pools daily. Its proven reserves? 37 billion barrels of crude oil, plus an energy jackpot. 206 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. That's not just wealth under the ground, that's political leverage. For India, Nigeria has always been a familiar supplier, accounting for about $4 billion worth of oil each year, covering 20 to 25% of India's needs. But this was different. When India's pivot away from Russia began, Nigerian grades like Agbami, a light, low-sulfur crude, went from regular customer order to priority shipment. Refiners love Agbami because it's easy to process and yields the clean, high-value fuels every booming economy needs. It's the type of crude that makes refinery managers sleep better at night. And here's the thing, Nigeria wasn't just filling a gap for India. The shift also allowed Nigeria to flex on the global stage. With demand spiking from Asia, Nigerian barrels weren't just sold, they were sought after. Prices firmed up, political ties deepened, and suddenly, Nigeria wasn't just exporting oil, it was exporting influence. Diplomatically, it was a win-win. India got a reliable new partner, Nigeria got a bigger slice of one of the world's fastest growing energy markets. But, and this is a big but, the reality on the ground in Nigeria had a twist that most headlines skipped. Because for all its oil wealth, Nigeria's newest crown jewel, the Dangote Refinery, the largest in Africa, wasn't running mainly on Nigerian oil at all. Right now, around 60% of the crude it processes comes from the United States. That's like having a farm full of mango trees and importing mangoes from across the ocean to make your juice. Why? We would get into the specifics in a second, but in short, logistics gaps, infrastructure mismatches, and the time it takes to realign supply chains. Dangote's team insists they'll run 100% Nigerian crude by the end of 2025. But until then, the irony is striking. India leans more on Nigeria's oil. Nigeria leans heavily on US oil, and US foreign policy is influencing both. And this isn't just an oil logistics quirk. It's a glimpse into how interconnected and politically tangled the global energy system really is. And if you think this triangle of dependency stops here, wait until you see how it plays into the bigger geopolitical chessboard. The Dangote Refinery is supposed to be Nigeria's ace card, the largest in Africa, designed to process 650,000 barrels of crude oil every single day. It's the kind of facility that makes headlines, attracts international delegations, and sparks national pride. And it was built with one clear mission: to end Nigeria's long-standing dependency on imported refined fuel. But here's the part that makes analysts raise an eyebrow. Despite sitting in a country overflowing with oil reserves, Dangote currently gets about 60% of its crude from the United States. Yes, you heard that right. America, halfway around the globe, is the primary supplier to Africa's biggest refinery. Now, why would that be? 3 reasons, none of them simple. Logistics gaps. Many of Nigeria's oil fields aren't directly connected to the infrastructure needed to feed Dangote efficiently. That means delays, added costs, and in some cases, complicated transport routes. Quality match. US crude blends like WTI and Mars can be a perfect fit for the refinery's configuration, while Nigeria adjusts its internal supply systems. Reliability during ramp-up. Dangote is still in the scaling phase. When you're fine-tuning a mega refinery, you don't want supply hiccups from domestic bottlenecks slowing things down. US suppliers can deliver consistently on schedule. But here's where the irony bites. India is now leaning more on Nigeria for oil. Nigeria's flagship refinery is leaning on US oil. And US foreign policy, the same one that just pushed India to move away from Russian crude, is quietly shaping both sides of this triangle. It's a feedback loop, one where decisions in Washington can ripple across the Atlantic, bounce through Africa, and land squarely in Asia, all within weeks. Dangote's team says that by the end of 2025, they'll be running 100% Nigerian crude. If that happens, it changes the dynamic again, boosting Nigeria's energy self-reliance and potentially reshaping trade flows with India. But until then, it's a fascinating and slightly absurd reminder that in the global oil game, the shortest distance between 2 points is often the longest route on the map. And this twist sets us up for the bigger picture, the global chessboard, where India, Nigeria, and the US aren't just trading oil. They're maneuvering for long-term influence. Next up, we go wide angle, the deals, the alliances, the subtle moves shaping not just today's fuel prices, but tomorrow's power balance. What's happening between India, Nigeria, and the US isn't just commerce, it's choreography. Every deal, every shipment, every handshake, it's all part of a larger dance on the global chessboard. Let's rewind just a year. In 2024, Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India and President Bola Tinubu of Nigeria stood side by side in Abuja. They pledged deeper cooperation in energy, security, and trade. For Nigeria, it meant locking in a buyer for billions of dollars worth of oil. For India, it meant securing a politically friendly supplier in a time of mounting global instability. It wasn't a new friendship. Nigeria has long been India's biggest trading partner in Africa. But in geopolitics, timing is everything. And 2025's shakeup made this alliance more valuable than ever. On the other side of the map, India faced a new complication: EU sanctions targeting Nayara Energy's Rosneft-linked refinery in Gujarat. That refinery suddenly lost access to certain European markets, squeezing India's refining strategy even further. The result? India had one more reason to diversify away from Russian barrels and secure alternative suppliers like Nigeria. Here's where the strategy gets interesting. Think of the oil trade like a giant poker table. Every country is holding cards: production capacity, reserves, shipping routes, refining tech, and political alliances. Russia's war reshuffled the deck. US tariffs raised the stakes. India and Nigeria, they saw a chance to swap cards and maybe, just maybe, get a better hand for the next round. But don't mistake this for a friendly game. Every move here is edged. India still buys from the Middle East, Nigeria still sells to Europe, and the US, even while indirectly linking India and Nigeria through trade, still plays its own separate game of securing influence in both regions. This isn't about one deal or one year, it's about setting up for the next decade when the global south, led by nations like India and Nigeria, could wield far more leverage in energy markets than they do today. And the thing about chess, you don't win with one flashy move. You win by quietly controlling the board while everyone's watching the wrong piece. Because as much as this is a high-stakes geopolitical game, its impact is felt far away from the conference rooms and trade missions. It's felt in homes, at gas stations, in grocery aisles, wherever ordinary people live their daily lives. Here's the thing about global oil politics. You don't have to live in Lagos, Delhi, or Washington for it to touch your life. It already does. When India shifts from Russian crude to Nigerian crude, it's not just a headline. It's a supply chain rewire. And every time the supply chain changes, the cost ripples outward. For India, it means 1. A more resilient energy mix. If one supplier gets cut off, they're less exposed. 2nd, but also higher short-term costs. Nigerian barrels aren't as cheap as Russian ones, and shipping routes aren't as straightforward. That cost gets baked into the price at the pump. For Nigeria, it means more revenue flowing into government coffers, a stronger trade balance, and more political leverage in future negotiations. For global markets, it means more players are competing for the same barrels, potential price swings when political tensions rise. And for you, here's how it might show up. 1. That slight jump in your fuel price next month. 2. The electricity bill is creeping higher because generators run on pricier fuel. 3. Groceries cost a little more because when fuel prices go up, so do transportation costs for everything on the shelf. This is why, when you hear about an oil deal thousands of miles away, you can't just tune it out. It's not a distant chess game. It's the reason your gas tank cost an extra few dollars to fill or why your flight ticket just went up. And it's a reminder that energy politics is household politics. Even if you've never seen a barrel of crude in your life, the decisions about where it comes from and who sells it to whom still find their way to your doorstep. Next, we're heading into the final payoff, where we wrap the story, bring the bigger lesson home, and leave you with a question you'll still be thinking about tomorrow. Oil isn't just black gold, it's a liquid strategy. Every barrel tells a story of alliances formed, deals broken, and power quietly traded behind closed doors. In 2025, India's pivot away from Russia wasn't just a buying decision, it was a geopolitical move, signaling to the world that it could adapt fast under pressure. Nigeria's rise in India's oil mix wasn't just good business. It was a chance to strengthen its hand in the global South's growing influence. And the irony of Dangote running mostly on US crude, that's the perfect reminder that in global trade, things are rarely as simple as they look. Countries dance when the music changes. Some lead, some follow, and sometimes the song you hear isn't the one being played.